Napoleon Bonaparte remains one of history's most paradoxical figures, a military commander of unparalleled tactical brilliance who led his Grande Armée to catastrophic defeat in Russia, a champion of meritocracy who crowned himself emperor, a spreader of Enlightenment ideals through authoritarian means. To assess whether Napoleon deserves the label of genius requires examining the distinct domains in which he operated: military strategy, administrative reform, legal innovation, and political maneuvering. The evidence reveals a man of extraordinary gifts whose intellect and vision transformed Europe, yet whose fatal blind spots ultimately destroyed his empire. Napoleon's genius was real but circumscribed, brilliant in execution but flawed in ultimate judgment. Napoleon's military genius stands as perhaps his most indisputable achievement. He inherited the levée en masse and the divisional system from revolutionary France, but transformed these raw materials into an instrument of unprecedented power. His innovations revolutionized warfare in ways that shaped military doctrine well into the 20th century. Traditional 18th-century warfare had emphasized slow, methodical maneuvering, the protection of supply lines, and avoidance of decisive battle. Napoleon rejected this entirely. His approach centered on rapid movement, living off the land, concentrating superior force at the decisive point, and seeking the destruction of enemy armies rather than the mere capture of territory. The campaign of 1805 exemplifies his operational genius at its zenith. Facing the combined forces of Austria and Russia, Napoleon executed a strategic masterpiece. While the Austrians expected him to advance through the Black Forest as previous French armies had done, he instead marched his 7 corps along separate but mutually supporting routes, achieving unprecedented speed while maintaining the ability to concentrate rapidly. The Austrian General Mack found himself surrounded at Ulm before he fully understood Napoleon's intentions, surrendering 30,000 men without a major battle. Weeks later at Austerlitz, Napoleon deliberately weakened his right flank to lure the Allies into attacking there, then crushed their exposed center with troops he had concealed. The battle destroyed the Third Coalition and established French hegemony over Central Europe. As military historian David Chandler notes, Napoleon possessed an almost preternatural ability to perceive the decisive point in any military situation and concentrate overwhelming force there before his enemies could respond. His tactical innovations were equally significant. Napoleon elevated artillery from a supporting arm to the primary instrument of battlefield decision. He massed guns in grand batteries that could shatter enemy formations, creating opportunities for decisive infantry and cavalry attacks. At Friedland in 1807, he positioned 36 guns to enfilade the Russian army trapped against the Al River, inflicting devastating casualties. He understood the psychological dimensions of warfare, knowing that morale often mattered more than numbers. His presence on battlefields famously inspired his troops, leading the Duke of Wellington to remark that Napoleon's presence was worth 40,000 men. He cultivated this mystique deliberately, issuing stirring proclamations, sharing soldiers' hardships, and distributing rewards with theatrical flair. Yet Napoleon's military genius contained fatal flaws that ultimately destroyed him. His very successes bred a dangerous overconfidence and a belief that willpower could overcome material realities. The Spanish ulcer, his dismissive term for the Peninsular War, drained 300,000 French troops in a grinding counterinsurgency that his conventional military brilliance could not resolve. He failed to recognize that the guerrilla warfare perfected by Spanish irregulars required different methods than the decisive battles at which he excelled. More catastrophically, the Russian campaign of 1812 revealed the limits of his strategic vision. His operational planning for the invasion was characteristically brilliant, but he failed to consider that the Russians might refuse battle, trade space for time, and allow distance and winter to destroy his army. When Napoleon entered Moscow in September, he had won the campaign but lost the war. Of the 600,000 men who crossed into Russia, fewer than 100,000 returned. As historian Andrew Roberts observes, Napoleon's genius was tactical and operational rather than strategic. He could win battles with unmatched skill, but his grand strategy often pursued objectives beyond France's actual capacity to sustain. If Napoleon's military achievements remain contested, his administrative and legal genius stands on firmer ground. The institutional structures he created proved far more durable than his military conquests, many surviving to the present day. Revolutionary France had demolished the Ancien regime but struggled to create coherent replacement institutions. Napoleon provided that coherence, establishing administrative machinery of remarkable efficiency and rationality. The Napoleonic Code, promulgated in 1804, represents perhaps his most enduring achievement. This comprehensive codification of civil law replaced the chaotic patchwork of Roman law, customary law, and feudal privileges that had previously governed France. The code enshrined key revolutionary principles: equality before the law, religious toleration, abolition of feudalism, protection of property rights, in clear, accessible language. It established the supremacy of secular law over religious doctrine, a radical innovation in early 19th century Europe. The code's influence extended far beyond France, providing the foundation for legal systems throughout continental Europe, Latin America, Quebec, Louisiana, and parts of Africa and Asia. Modern civil law systems governing the lives of billions trace their lineage to Napoleon's codification. As legal scholar Jean-Louis Halperin argues, the Napoleonic Code represented a genuine synthesis of revolutionary ideals with practical jurisprudence, creating a flexible instrument that could evolve with changing social conditions while maintaining core principles. Napoleon's administrative reforms displayed similar genius for institutional design. He created the Banque de France to stabilize the currency and finance government operations, establishing fiscal credibility that had eluded revolutionary regimes. His reorganization of French education created the lycée system and grandes écoles that still educate France's elite. He established the Legion of Honor to reward merit regardless of birth, institutionalizing meritocratic principles that challenged aristocratic privilege. His transformation of France's infrastructure, roads, canals, bridges, facilitated commerce and military movement while providing employment. He rationalized tax collection, creating consistent assessment and efficient administration that increased revenues while reducing corruption. These achievements required more than mere administrative competence; they demanded intellectual vision and political will. Napoleon grasped that lasting power required more than military victory; it required institutional legitimacy and efficient governance. He understood that France's revolutionary energy needed channeling into productive institutions rather than dissipating in continued upheaval. His genius lay partly in recognizing which revolutionary innovations deserved preservation and which required modification or abandonment. He kept equality before the law but restored social hierarchy. He maintained religious toleration but reconciled with the Catholic Church through the Concordat of 1801. He preserved property rights established by revolutionary land sales while creating new aristocratic titles. Yet here too, Napoleon's vision had limits. The code's treatment of women represented a significant regression from revolutionary advances, subordinating wives to husbands and restricting women's property rights and legal autonomy. His educational reforms, while expanding opportunity, also served purposes of social control and military recruitment. His administrative efficiency came at the cost of centralization that stifled local initiative and created dependence on the state. His meritocratic principles were real but limited. He created a new aristocracy barely distinguishable from the old, demonstrating that his revolution was more about replacing elites than eliminating hierarchy. Napoleon's political genius manifested in his remarkable rise from provincial obscurity to imperial power and in his ability to maintain popular support despite increasingly authoritarian rule. His political instincts were extraordinary, though ultimately insufficient to sustain his ambitions. His ascent illustrated brilliant political opportunism. A young artillery officer of minor Corsican nobility, Napoleon exploited revolutionary chaos to advance through military success, political connections, and carefully cultivated image-making. His Italian campaigns of 1796 to 1797 transformed him from promising general to national hero. He understood that military glory could translate to political power in ways the Directory's civilian politicians could not match. The coup of 18 Brumaire in 1799 appeared almost inevitable in retrospect, yet required precise timing, careful coalition building, and theatrical nerve to execute. Within 5 years, the first consul became emperor, a trajectory that demonstrated Napoleon's acute understanding of French political psychology. The French, exhausted by revolutionary turbulence, desired order and glory more than liberty. Napoleon provided both while maintaining revolutionary symbols and rhetoric. His manipulation of public opinion showed a sophisticated understanding of propaganda and spectacle. He controlled newspapers rigorously, suppressing criticism while promoting accounts of his victories. He commissioned paintings depicting him as heroic and majestic, crossing the Alps on a rearing stallion rather than the mule he actually rode. He staged elaborate ceremonies blending revolutionary symbolism with imperial grandeur, crafting a political aesthetic that legitimized his rule. The imperial coronation in 1804, where he crowned himself while the Pope stood by, symbolized his political genius. He secured religious sanction while demonstrating that authority flowed from his own achievements rather than divine right or papal approval. Yet Napoleon's political judgment ultimately failed him catastrophically. His fundamental error was confusing French dominance with French security. A France secure within its natural frontiers and exercising influence through the power of its ideas and institutions might have proven sustainable. Instead, Napoleon pursued an ever-expanding empire, subordinating European states, placing relatives on foreign thrones, and enforcing the continental system even when it damaged French interests. This imperial overreach generated the nationalism that destroyed him. Spaniards, Germans, and Russians developed national consciousness precisely through resistance to French domination. As historian David Bell argues, Napoleon helped create the very nationalism that would define 19th-century Europe and ultimately undo his empire. His political genius also failed to create lasting institutions for succession and governance independent of his person. Napoleon's system was patrimonial rather than constitutional. It depended entirely on his individual authority. When he fell, nearly everything fell with him. The restored Bourbons retained some Napoleonic institutions but rejected the political culture he had created. Unlike truly transformative leaders who build movements and institutions that outlast them, Napoleon created a system that required Napoleon. Assessing Napoleon's claim to genius requires distinguishing between different types of intellectual excellence. In tactical and operational military affairs, his genius seems incontestable. His campaigns remain studied in military academies worldwide because they demonstrate timeless principles of warfare, concentration of force, economy of effort, surprise, and the decisive offensive. In institutional design and legal codification, he showed remarkable synthetic ability, combining revolutionary principles with practical governance in ways that shaped modern state administration. In these domains, genius seems the appropriate label. Yet genius implies not merely exceptional ability in specific domains but also wisdom in their application. Here Napoleon's record becomes problematic. His military brilliance served ultimately destructive ends, exhausting France in wars that brought neither security nor prosperity. His administrative innovations were employed to extract resources for military adventures that squandered French lives and treasure. His political acumen sufficed to gain power but not to build a sustainable order. As historian Paul Schroeder observes, Napoleon's fundamental mistake was treating international relations as an extension of military operations, seeking decisive victory where sustained diplomacy and restraint might have secured French interests more reliably. The question of Napoleon's genius ultimately depends on what we mean by the term. If genius means extraordinary cognitive ability, innovative thinking, and transformative achievement in specific domains, Napoleon clearly qualifies. Few individuals have demonstrated such a range of exceptional ability: military, legal, administrative, political. If genius also implies wisdom, judgment, and the subordination of exceptional abilities to worthy ends, Napoleon's claim weakens considerably. His gifts were real but served ambitions that ultimately proved destructive to France, Europe, and himself. Perhaps the fairest assessment is that Napoleon possessed multiple forms of genius but lacked the strategic wisdom and moral vision to employ them constructively. He could win battles but not secure peace, he could codify laws but not protect liberty, he could seize power but not legitimize authority, he could inspire armies but not restrain ambition. His legacy remains profoundly ambiguous. The Napoleonic Code endures, but so does the nationalism his conquests provoked. Administrative rationalization persists, but so does militaristic political culture. Meritocratic ideals survive, but so does authoritarian centralization. Napoleon's career demonstrates that genius unmoored from wisdom becomes mere talented destructiveness. His extraordinary abilities reshaped Europe and influenced global development in ways still felt 2 centuries later. Yet he left France smaller, poorer, and weaker than he found it, having sacrificed hundreds of thousands of lives in pursuit of glory that proved ephemeral. He was undoubtedly a genius, but one whose brilliance illuminated as much about the limits and dangers of exceptional ability as about its possibilities. In the end, perhaps Napoleon's greatest legacy is cautionary: genius without judgment, however dazzling, ultimately consumes itself and those who follow it. The question is not whether Napoleon was a genius, but whether his particular form of genius, brilliant in means but catastrophic in ends, deserves admiration or serves as warning.